And this young boy, now an engaged young man, says that he was actually this boy who stole the watch. And he said the rabbi came by him, put his hand in his pocket, took the watch, slipped it into his own pocket, didn't say a word, and continued reaching into all the kids' pockets, ensuring that nobody stole the watch. And then a little bit later, the rabbi says, "Oh, we found the watch," and returned it to the boy. And this young man said, that rabbi, in his great wisdom, understood how much damage would have been done had he pointed it out in front of everyone. I would be that thief, and for the rest of my life, I would never be able to repair my name. And as a second grader, second graders do what second graders do. And he says, who knows if he didn't save me from doing terrible things in my life, having that terrible reputation follow me. Instead, he was thoughtful, understanding, sensitive, caring, and loving. Just kept it a secret. And so many years later, he had this special appreciation for that rabbi who didn't embarrass him, who used a special level of sensitivity. Now, on many, many different levels, this is such a beautiful idea, such a beautiful story. But sometimes we are also able to be greater than physical, greater than 1 + 1 = 2. We're used to this world being a world of physical dimensions. Money, the world assumes, is it's very cut and dry. 1 + 1 = 2. I can bring you hundreds of examples where 1 + 1 equals whatever God wants it to be. It's not to say, there's a joke. There's this company that was looking for an accountant, and they had people lining up down all the way around the block, interviewing for this position. Very prominent company, and they're hiring for this, prestigious position of being their head accountant. And every person comes in, they ask them a question, and they say, out, next. Next one comes in, next. Next one comes in. Finally, the Jewish accountant comes in. And they said to him, okay, how much is 2 + 2? And he says, well, it depends. How much do you want it to be? You're hired. Right. Right. It's not the same. Okay. But the truth is that we all see that there are times that something physical has a spiritual blessing. That something physical is not limited to the physical dimensions that we're familiar with. Where our money, we can have that same $100. It just lasts so much longer. It brings so much more blessing. Do you know where we learn this from? We learn this idea from the sabbatical year. Just read in this week's parsha. God promises us. You work 6 years. 6 years, work your fields. Work it and work it and work it. 7th year, take a break. It's time for us to connect. Father-son relationship. 1 year, let go of your fields. I'll take care of you. I'll give you a triple crop. 6th, 7th, 8th is on me. Wow. What do you mean? 1 + 1 = 2. If I don't work the field, it's not going to grow. God says, if you think that way, you're too engrossed in your field. You must have that year off. You have to remember that even the years that you work the field, it's a miracle. When you don't work the field, it's also a miracle. 1 + 1 = 2 when we're limiting it. But when God endows it with blessing, 1 + 1 = 1,000,000 or 10 million. There are miracles that come from all directions. when we're ready and when we're not ready. So we always, by limiting God to a physical being, we're limiting ourselves. We're limiting ourselves versus we're limiting God, which you can't do. Again, it's against one of the principles of faith. God is limitless. But we're limiting ourselves. We're limiting our ability to become great people, to think beyond our physical limitations.
We live in a world that does that.
Well, yeah, we are living in a world that does that. But don't forget, we're also living in a world that sees in the palm of our hands the limitless ability, the limitless power. You can open up your cell phone and you can be talking to someone on the other side of the globe and seeing them in HD. And you can report your news from your phone wherever you are in the globe. You can see, the verse tells us actually, we say this in the Yom Yom. We say there's a special psalm that we say at the end of every morning's prayer, and we say the following. Okay. Uchsilim matai taskilu. And you fools, when will you gain wisdom? He who implants the ear, shall he not hear? God gave us an ear, and you think he can't hear? You think he can't hear our conversations? He who fashions the eye shall not see? He who chastises nation, shall he not rebuke? He who teaches man knowledge, Hashem knows the thoughts of man, that they are futile. So you think that we can have, what do they call that? The machine that they can, the lie detector. What do they call it? The
Polygraph.
The polygraph, right? Oh, the machine is smarter than God. It knows when you're lying, but God doesn't. Today they have AI, artificial intelligence. It can tell you what you're thinking. I remember when I was in yeshiva, I had a classmate who then was very busy with nanotechnology, and he told me he was working then with his father on a mouse that was a band-aid over your finger attached to a wire, and that it would connect with your senses, with your sensors in your fingertips and your eyes. And all you would need to do was move your eyes, and it would automatically know what you wanted to look at, and what you were pointing, your eye would go to the place you wanted to point. I mean, unbelievable technology. What do you think? Oh, mankind is so smart, but God doesn't have it worked out. He can't figure nothing out. We could see from one side of the world to the other, but God? Nah, no such wisdom. Who gave us the ability to see? Who gave us the ability to hear? Who gave us the ability to speak? Who gave us the ability to understand? But God doesn't understand. But God doesn't have mercy. But God doesn't have kindness. Oh no, we could do tikkun olam, but God, he doesn't have a hand on this world. It's preposterous to think that way. The only way we think that way is if we see God as limited, just like we are, and we can't see a God that's greater. The limitation, so just so you understand, the limitation of these sweet, beautiful souls that are teaching erroneously Bible criticism is because they are pulling God down to be an equivalent of theirs. I'm limited, so God must be limited. I'm limited in my capability of understanding. I'm limited in my vision. I can only see, a mile down the road, 2 miles down the road. How far can you see the Bucky sign? 3 miles down the road, you can see it. All right, so that's how much I can see. God can see about that far, maybe. Yeah, because God is limited like I am. So they're pulling God down instead of lifting themselves up.
God is an idea to him. Not really.
It's an idea, exactly.
And even the Torah to them is a mythology written by men.
So either way, we need to be very careful of that way of thinking. God has no limits. God is not trapped in time or physical boundaries. This is because he is not a physical being or force, as discussed earlier. The Torah teaches us this third principle when it says, "You have not seen any image," in Deuteronomy 4:15. We cannot conceive of God of having any image or form. Oh, so now explain this to me, Rabbi. Well, it does say that God created us in his form, in his image. So God looks like us. He has 2 eyes and 2 nostrils and a mouth and an ear and ears, right? And this is, right? No. It means God designed us in the way he wanted us to be. In his image doesn't necessarily mean the way God looks, because God doesn't have a form. It can't be in God's image. And when it says that Moses saw the back of God's head, obviously that's metaphorically, because God doesn't have a head. It says that when Moses elevated to the heavens and he reached the highest realm, he saw God tying the crowns on top of the letters of the alphabet. God was sitting there with a sewing kit and sewing the crowns. Of course not. We're talking in a spiritual world, in a spiritual realm. So, Maimonides continues as follows. It is clearly expressed in both the Torah and in the prophets that God has neither a body nor any other physical attributes. God doesn't get an ear infection. God doesn't need a throat culture. God doesn't have an aching muscle. It is thus written. By the way, you have to understand, where does anger come from? It says that God was angry. God, right? Where does that come from? Where does anger come from? Anger comes from a physical limitation. Because us being limited, we're very delicate in our own honor. We're very delicate because we're so small. All we are is 6 feet tall. That's it, right? And if someone looks at us small, then we feel like you took away from our honor. God doesn't have a form. God isn't limited to the same types of honor. Oh, so when God's jealous, what does that mean? It's a way for us to understand and connect. But God doesn't sit there saying, God is so spiteful about these, terrible things that people are doing to God. No. It goes back to the original idea of why did God create the world? We have to understand that first. Why did God create the world? Why did God invest in every single one of us? I was thinking, we spoke about last week that God is one. God is one. Do you know who else is one? Each of us are one. You are the only you. You're the only David. Right? You could use a few more like you. You're a good man. But we're all one. We have one DNA. There's one fingerprint. There's one, right? There's only one of us. But we're very identical to many others. God is not only one, but there's nothing identical to God. God's oneness is one alone, with no second to God. It's very important to understand this. Yes, we have a oneness as an individual task, an individual purpose, an individual accomplishment or achievement we need to accomplish and achieve in our lifetime. And that's unique. That's truly unique. That's one of a kind. That's not the same type of oneness as we have with the Almighty. The Almighty's oneness is no comparative. There's nothing that compares to God. And when we talk in way number 3, the third of the principle of the 13 principles, God has no form. He has no physical limitation. God isn't jealous because look, I can't believe he got the compliment, not me. Where you gave him 2 pieces of chocolate and me 1. No, he drives a nicer car than me. No, this is things for us to be able to comprehend what's going on over here. But not to actually put God into a human form as God is spiteful. God is an angry God. Oh, don't mess with God on a bad day. You never know. He didn't have his coffee. Right? Crazy things can happen. No, God forbid. God is not limited like we are. It is thus written in Joshua, "The Lord your God is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. A physical body, however, cannot be in 2 places at the same time." Right? If you're, there's a known phrase that's said in Yiddish. You can't, I'll translate, right? You can't dance by 2 weddings. Right? If you're by 1 wedding, you can't by the other wedding. You can't be by 2 different weddings at the same time. God can't also be the God of the heavens and be the God of the earth if he's physical. Because he can't be in 2 places at the same time. But because God does not translate into physical limitations, God isn't a physical being. God can't be limited to be in 1 place at a time. Because God isn't limited to space, and God isn't limited to time, and God isn't limited to physical. God isn't limited, period. The Torah likewise says, "You have not seen any image." God furthermore told his prophets, "To whom will you liken me? To what am I equal?" If God were a physical being, then he would resemble other physical things. And God isn't. Right? It's a rhetorical question. To whom am I similar to? To whom am I equal? To no one. Because there's nothing equal to God who has no physical form. Every other existence needs a physical form to give it its identity, to give it its existence. Okay? It's Maimonides. Yesodei Torah. 1:8. And in 1:9 it continues. Once we know this to be true, we might find it difficult to understand any passages in the Torah. We thus find such expressions as beneath his feet and written with God's finger. In many places we likewise find expressions such as the hand of God, the eyes of God, the ears of God. All these expressions are actually adaptations to human intellect, which can only think in terms of the physical. For us, it's virtually impossible for us to understand these concepts of God being out of the limitation of time, because all we understand is time. Right? Since we were born, we are in an existence of time. And suddenly, we get out of that existence of time to understand godliness. It's very difficult. Think of it like this. A 1-year-old child. My little daughter. She's 5 months old. 5.5 months old. Sweetest little thing. Yeah. She, on Friday, we were introducing her to some new foods, and my wife gave her an apple, and she was just sucking on the apple, taking the juice out of the apple. She's just learning how to right? Now, let me ask you, does she understand where that apple comes from? Does she realize, wow, someone took a seed, put it in the ground, and the ground was, you had to sow it, and then suddenly you see a little beautiful buds coming out of the ground, and then it becomes a tree, and then the tree needs to be pruned, and you have to take care of it, and then you grow nice apples, and then you got to spray to make sure there's no insects that eat up the apples, or you have to protect it in other ways. And then someone picks it, and then someone collects them and puts them in a basket, and then someone has to package them, and then someone has to ship them, and then someone has to deliver them, and then someone has to put them in the store, and then someone has to go to the store, and someone has to pay money for them, and bring them home, and then rinse them, cut them up, and put them in your hand. It could be 20, 30, 40, 50 people having to deal with your apple so that it gets from the farm to your table. Think that baby understands that? Absolutely not. And by the time she has the intellect to understand that there is such a process, she will have seen an apple 5,000 times. What's the likelihood that at the age of 7 or 10 that she's able to contemplate these ideas? She's going to suddenly say, wow, so let me think a second. How did this apple get here? No! Apple gets it because you open up the refrigerator door and it's there.
Yeah.
But their intellect, when they're 5 months versus 5 years or 10 years, continually grows and develops. So when they're 7 years old, they become much more inquisitive. They start asking questions. They start realizing things. But it's still to change something that you've seen so many times before, to suddenly start asking those questions. It's very, very difficult. That's why our sages tell us that Abraham was able to ask certain questions because till the age of 3 he didn't see sunlight. He comes out to the world for the first time with the intellect of a 3-year-old. So he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. One second. How did this apple get here? Like, what do you mean? It's an apple. It's an apple. Wait, where does the apple come from? It just fell down? From where? What do you mean? We go to the orchard. We get it from a tree. What do you mean? How does it grow from a tree? What do you mean? You just plant the seed and it grows. What do you mean just grows? Right? It's the equivalent of saying you take your Apple iPhone, put it in the ground, and you'll have a tree that grows Apple iPhones. That's the equivalent of saying that you take this little seed, put it in the ground, and you'll have 1,000 apples grow from there. And each one of those, by the way, have inside them a little chip that you plant them in the ground, and you have another tree grow. That'd be pretty good business. Abraham says this can't be. You can't have an existence like this, where things just grow, without there being a design here. What is this design? And he inquires and discovers God. There has to be a power behind all of this. There has to be a force behind all of this. That force is not limited. It's not limited to space. It's not limited to time. It's not limited to physical. And that's Hashem. Maimonides is telling us here. Once we know this is true, we're going to have a difficult time understanding. 1 second, it says, Etzbel Elokimu. It's the finger of Hashem. And the God took the Jewish people out biyad chazakah, with an outstretched, strong hand, a strong arm. So we see God is physical. No. All these expressions are actually adaptations to human intellect, which can only think in terms of the physical. The Torah thus speaks in the language of man. They are all metaphors. For example, we find in the Torah such expressions as, I will sharpen my flashing sword. Can we then say that God has a sword? Or that he needs a sword with which to kill? Again, these are limitations to God. We understand, however, that the expression is used allegorically. The same is true of all similar expressions. God is not limited. God cannot be limited. The only limitations are the limitations we have as physical creations of the Almighty. It's an amazing idea here that we need to internalize. We need to internalize there's nothing that God is limited from. We're taking this into our own day-to-day life. Anyone here try to think of like, well, 1 second, how can that happen? How can I make that happen? Well, so I want to share with you a special prayer. I'll pull out the prayer book again. Thank you so much for your help before. Thank you, Clara. We say in the Amidah, I'm going to share with you a secret of the Chafetz Chaim and many, many other sages that say the following secret. Anybody who says the Amidah, listen very, very carefully. It's very, very important. And if you don't say the Amidah, let me introduce you to the Amidah. The Amidah is 19 blessings. We say it in the morning service, Shacharit, in the afternoon, Mincha, and in the evening, Ma'ariv, Arvit. 18 blessings plus one. And one of those blessings seems to get the least attention. And that is the Davidic reign. And it goes as follows. The offspring of your servant David, may you speedily cause to flourish and raise his glory through your salvation. For we hope for your salvation all day long. Blessed are you, Hashem, who causes the glory of salvation to flourish. Right? Matzmiach Keren Yeshua, we want the salvation. Of all the blessings, this one probably gets the least attention, the least focus. I heard an amazing idea about this blessing. I see actually my dear friend Zale Newman, who's the author of an incredible prayer book, Stairway to Heaven, that we use in our prayer class Saturday morning. I want to thank you so much for your incredible work. I have a chance now on Facebook Live. I want to share this amazing idea in his honor. The Chafetz Chaim says, we say over here in these words, Ki lishuatcha kivinu kol hayom, that for your salvation we hope all day long. The Chafetz Chaim says about these words, that if you have in mind any issue that you're facing, whether it's an issue of trying to find a job, whether it's an issue trying to find a mate for someone you know, someone who's looking to settle down and find their mate. You're trying to raise funds for a special cause. You need health. You need success in any area. If you have in mind during these 5 words, Ki lishuatcha kivinu kol hayom, and for your salvation we hope for all day long, it is guaranteed that you'll find the salvation during that day. On one condition: you put an effort forward. Does your effort necessarily bring about your success? Absolutely not. So where does that success come from? Our job is to put our effort forward. It's God, who's limitless, who's not physical, who's not limited to any trappings, who brings about that success. So when we're trying to take this third principle of faith, and we're trying to internalize this idea into our day-to-day lives, we have to understand that clinging to Hashem, not only having faith, but having trust in Hashem, means that we recognize that God is Hakol Yachol. God is capable and can do anything. Now, we have to remember, God, we can't expect God to do miracles. You're not allowed to expect miracles. But that God is capable of anything. And if God deems it correct or the right thing, it will come. But how can that happen? I can't make it. It's not for you to figure out how it works or when it will work. Put an effort forward. Ki liyeshuatcha kivinu kol hayom. We are hoping for your salvation all day long. Put your effort forward. I can't tell you, since I heard this idea from, I'm trying to give the credit to the correct Rabbi Yechiel Spiro, who came to Houston about a year ago, and he spoke. He has many beautiful books touched by the Parsha, touched by the Pesach Seder, by our heritage. Just great books. He shared this idea. It's a gem of an idea from the Chavetz Chaim. That all we need to do when we say these words, we seek your salvation all day long. Think about those challenges that you see are insurmountable. There's no way in the world, like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I have to pay the bill. I have no idea where help is going to come from. We had someone, I'm not going to mention who, someone who comes to this class regularly, who told us when we had our 24-hour campaign, he said to me, I made a contribution to Torch that didn't make any sense because I didn't have the money to cover it up, but I knew it was the right thing for me to do, so I prayed. He says, and that day I opened up the mailbox, and what did I find? I got money back from the IRS from 3 years ago. I paid too much taxes, and they sent it back. He said, I just got money he never expected to get back, equaling the exact amount he gave in his donation. True story. I can tell you who it was, but I'm not going to. Someone who comes to this class regularly. Sometimes we do things we have no idea. Again, we're limited by the physical limitations of this world, and $1 equals $1. And we get into God's world and we see that $1 equals whatever God wants it to be. The reason I'm using the example of money is because money is something that people have a weird relationship with money. It's really weird. People think that money is the be-all and end-all. It's not. It's not even close. It's nothing.
It's dirt and that's
Yeah. But we understand that God has no limits. And when we need something, and we can turn to a God who has no limits, anything is possible. But if we limit God, well, God can't do this. Come on, this is, it's impossible. We're limiting our ability to allow that blessing into our lives. We're limiting our own success by not recognizing God's great, unlimited abilities. So there's much more to talk about, but it's getting late. I want to thank you all for joining us here tonight. I want to remind everyone that we have the pre-Shavuot flower arranging workshop for the women at the magnificent Plants and Petals flower shop on Westheimer. Everyone is welcome to join. Men are not welcome, sorry. Women only are welcome to join. It's with the remarkable Zahava Wolbe. And you must pre-register if you'd like to join. We encourage you to do so. So please join us. You can visit torchweb.org. And regarding our upcoming classes, we have our regular programs this week. Next week, Sunday and Monday, are Shavuot. So we will not be having this regular Mussar Monday class. Not the AM or the PM Mussar Monday next week. Also, the Houstonian Club class will not either meet next week on Monday morning. But Saturday night, Sunday morning, 12 a.m., we will be having throughout the night classes taught by Torch rabbis all over the city, particularly at Congregation Beth Rambam, with a traditional Sephardic signature barbecue at 2:45 a.m.
Yeah, right.
And then we are also I'm going to be walking, and everyone is welcome to walk with me. I'm going to be walking from Congregation Beth Rambam at about 3:30 a.m. to Congregation Torah V'Chesed, and we're going to have a class. I'm not sure if it's going to, I don't know what they put down for me, either Hebrew or English, maybe French, we never know, right? It's going to be an entertaining class if it's going to be, because I don't speak any French. Pascal is my French at your fingertips trainer, and I don't speak French yet. So it's going to have to either be in Hebrew or English or Yiddish or Russian, but not French yet. And hopefully it's going to be from 4 o'clock to 5:45 a.m. And then the Shacharit services will begin. And then we have Shavuot festivities, in celebration, because we stayed up the whole night. All right, so I look forward to many, many more amazing Mussar Mondays with Al Yal. And we're going to continue next week with the fourth principle of faith. There's still a lot more that we need to add here. We'll get to it. Hopefully next week we'll add to the third principle. What's that? The week after next, right. Not next week, but the following week. And have a remarkable evening, everybody. When you go home, don't forget. Oh, tonight we have to count the Omer. We'll do that right when we sign off. Don't forget to like and share this video on Facebook. Have a magnificent evening, everybody. Have a good night.